So, hi, I'm Nikisha, and I hope everyone's excited for this panel. And I'll be introducing our authors now. First, we have Namina Forna, and she is from Sierra Leone and moved to the US and attended Spelman College, as well as the University of South Carolina School of Cinematic Arts. She loved to read as a kid as a way, as a form of escape, and her goal was to create a book with strong Black heroines. She is the writer of The Gilded Ones, which made it onto the New York Times bestseller list. Then we have Barry Lyga. He is an American YA novelist and short story writer. He majored in English at Yale University, and he worked in the comic book industry for many years and has written for many entertainment companies like Marvel and DC. He is the writer of the I Hunt Killers series, which made it onto the New York Times and US Today list. Finally, we have Kiersten White. She is an American fiction author for kids in YA. She grew up in Utah and currently lives in San Diego. And she has written for many genres, including fantasy, historical fiction, and paranormal. She's written over 14 books and has won many awards for them.
Okay, so we do have a few questions. We could, for our panel, we can start off with the theme was, what do you feel about the terms geek versus nerd? Because among some nerds, the term geek can be deemed offensive. So would you prefer like geek or nerd if you reference like yourself?
Why am I the only one not muted?
We're taking turns.
All right. I've never found, when I was growing up, I'm much older than everybody else on this panel. When I was growing up, either term was considered pejorative. I guess we've reclaimed them now. For some reason, nerd to me always sounded like somebody who was smart and obsessive, but not necessarily about these sort of pop culture things, whereas a geek was somebody who was obsessed with superheroes or Harry Potter or Twilight or what have you, Dungeons and Dragons, whatever it is. So I tend to think of myself as a geek. When I bother to think about myself at all, my wife frequently refers to me as a nerd, so I guess you can call me either one.
It is so funny. You laughed the laugh of someone who had like thought about this and had opinions. So I was sitting waiting. I'm like, he is going to break it down for us. For me, honestly, like I've been called both all my life. I prefer nerd. I don't really have much. I think Barry had a good distinction there. But like for me, sort of interchangeable. I prefer nerd though. I am definitely a hardcore nerd.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that the distinctions that maybe were subtler back in the day have disappeared. And for me, a nerd or a geek is somebody who's open about something that they love and they're passionate about something that makes them happy. Like a couple years ago, my next door neighbor came out and they're very into sports, things with balls and points. And he said, "Oh, I came out here to ask you," and then he starts laughing. I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Well, I came out here to ask you if you have Star Wars on DVD so that we could borrow it because we've never seen it. But then I looked and every single member of your family, all 5 of us, were outside. I was wearing a Star Wars t-shirt. My husband was wearing a Star Wars t-shirt. Our 2 teens were wearing a Star Wars t-shirt. And my youngest was wearing a Star Wars t-shirt while riding a Star Wars bike, wearing his Star Wars shoes." And I was like, "You know what? Yeah, we do have them. Would you like the Blu-ray special edition?"
Right, exactly.
And I just, like, that's what I think is so fun about celebrating like nerd and geek culture, is it's just a way of saying, hey, I love this thing. It makes me happy. I'm going to be open about it so that I can find my people who love it too.
All good answers. Yeah, I always thought that like when I think of the word like geek, I always think of the TV show like Freaks and Geeks, and I feel like it's kind of been owned now of like it's something that's accepting, and everyone all has like their specific interests that they like, and it's okay to like be called like a nerd or a geek because it's what you like. It's based on your interests and what you like, and then you find your group of people that also like those things as well. We also have another question. So do you sometimes find that nerds expect more than the general readers in terms of how specific descriptions they want in that situation? So for example, if you're writing on a specific topic and someone of that fandom really is like very interested in that topic, are you hesitant when you're writing about it, or do you go like your own creative pathway towards that?
And that's a good question. That comes up a lot when you're writing IP. IP is when you're writing something for an existing property. So for example, I wrote Slayer and Chosen, which are Buffy the Vampire Slayer tie-in series. And there definitely was a lot of concern that I get things right, because it's a world that already exists and that meant a lot to a lot of people. And so I would say I did just as much, well, not quite as much, but a lot of research for that, compared to like writing a Frankenstein retelling or writing historical. It was a similar level of research because I wanted to make sure that I was getting the details right, because those matter, and they matter to the people that these properties mean a lot to. The scariest thing I've ever done was I wrote a Star Wars short story for from a certain point of view, The Empire Strikes Back, for the 40th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back. And I was so scared because I was like, Star Wars fans know their stuff. They know the names of the ships. They know the names of every person who's ever worked on those ships. They know, everything. Whereas I'm like, here's a clever line of dialogue. And so that one made me nervous. But the nice thing about Star Wars is they have fact checkers. They have people who work for the publisher who know literally everything that's ever happened in any of those universes. And so when you misname a ship in spite of your extensive research, they're like, actually, did you mean this ship instead? And you're like, yes, that's exactly what I meant. But it's fun. Like, it's fun knowing that you're participating in something that means a lot to people. And I never mind when people come to me with like, oh, this historical detail was wrong, or oh, you used Irish slang in your book that is not actually Irish slang at all. Here's what they would have said. Like, I love it because it means they're engaging with the story, and like, I want to know those things. I want to learn. And so, yeah, I don't ever mind when people engage in that way, because we all care about the same things.
I mean, I wrote the Flash novels, and I wrote the Origin of Thanos for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And in both cases, I mean, I am such a gigantic geek that like DC Comics is part of my DNA. So I never worried about getting that stuff wrong, because I know that biologically I'm incapable of getting that stuff wrong, because I've wasted so much of my life and brain power absorbing that stuff. And probably the most fun I have is in writing those Flash books is the copy editor would say, oh, shouldn't he say this instead of this? And I'm like, oh no, because in Adventure Comics number 392 in 1968, in panel 4, this happened. And they just go, okay, shut up, we'll go away now. But one of the hallmarks of being a nerd or a geek is you do feel a tremendous sense of ownership of the thing that you love. And you become very, depending on your personality, you can become very offended or very angry if somebody misinterprets it or presents it in a way that you find disagreeable. So you want to be aware of that. But I think if you are a geek writing for geeks, it's a lot easier, because you know where the pain points are and you know what to avoid. It's the same thing that lets you put in the little in-jokes and little Easter eggs that people are going to like so much. That same mentality allows you to omit the things that are going to tick somebody off.
I have to say that I sort of defer to you guys, and that I haven't written IP. And
it will come.
I haven't gotten that yet. Or maybe I have, and it's in a review, and I tend not to read reviews. So I'm just going to bow on this question and wait for the next one.
Yep, completely understandable. So the next question is, what is your favorite part of nerd culture? Like, what would you say is your specific niche for nerd culture?
Discovering worlds. It's funny. I have sort of like a different take on nerd culture because I'm an immigrant. I came to the US when I was 9. So I think like sort of like the whole fandom thing is not something that I'm deep in, although I am very much, you know, a nerd and I have like my specific things. Like for instance, when I discovered the world of Farscape, that was for me it, and that has like informed so much of my, do you guys know what Farscape is?
Mhm.
Like, am I the only one who watched it? That is like my thing. I loved that. Or discovering the world of Harry Potter, or discovering the world of Lord of the Rings. And then the other thing is like seeing it on the big screen. Because I remember when I watched every single one of the Lord of the Rings movies, and just like that feeling when you go into the theater, you're like, oh, this is my thing. I've read it. I know it. Let's see how the characters, let's see how the characters are shown, or how even better the magic is shown. That is just like, for me, the best thing. Discovering the worlds and then like seeing them like being brought into, you know, the big screen.
I think my favorite part, I think maybe you were asking about specific fandoms, but I find my favorite part of being a nerd and being in geek culture is the excitement and the shared excitement, right? Like the anticipation. So much so that if there's like a particular thing that I'm not really a fan of, like it's not that I dislike it, it's just not my thing, but there's something new coming out and people are so excited about it, I'm a little bit jealous. I'm like, dang, I wish I was a fan of that because look how excited they are. Like how amazing the last year has been for Taylor Swift fans. Like I I I enjoy Taylor Swift's music, but I've never been like super into it. And I've honestly been jealous. I'm like, oh, they are having the best year ever. I'm so happy for them. And like that's what I think is so fun about fandoms and about being open about what you love is you get that anticipation like, oh, we're entering the next phase of Marvel, or oh, we get the Loki miniseries, or oh, they're adapting Redwall for a Netflix miniseries by the creators of Over the Garden Wall. And I have been a fan of Redwall since I was in 5th grade, and I'm just really worried that they're going to pronounce the characters wrong, because that was the main thing I fought with my best friend over, because she pronounced all their names wrong. But I'll be okay. I'll be okay as long as I get my fill of those wonderful rodents. But yeah, I think for me it's less about specific fandom, and it's more about like just the joy of enjoying things and getting to not only anticipate things but experience that anticipation and that happiness with other people who love the same thing.
Yeah, it's knowing that there's that common element, you know, that even if you're in a room of people that you don't necessarily know, if you're all fans of the same thing, you have something to talk about and probably argue about.
Yeah, I really like how like for like the anticipation, and I really like how people all come together because of their one specific interest that they like, and it's such a fun time in your life to always be excited for a specific fandom, or like a movie that's coming out, or an adaptation, and like a different series coming out. So kind of going off of that question, is there like a fandom or a specific like that you are interested into? Like, have you seen someone else like that fandom and you're like, oh, I want to be a part of that as well. Like, I want to get into that as well, and maybe even write about it.
Um, I don't know. Like I will admit I'm really jealous of people who are really into video games and have those like immersive, like open world video games. I'm not allowed to play video games. I won't let myself, and I'm a mom, so I'm in charge. Um, because I'm too obsessive, and I know if I let myself get lost in a big video game, I would never work again. And I've got 3 kids to put through college. So that's one where I really envy, and I'm like, oh, they're so excited about this new game coming out, and I know that I would like it, but I can't let myself dip my toes in that world because I'm incapable of being like a casual fan of something. I will say, like, it is really fun being on the internet and getting recommendations for things that like I wouldn't normally gravitate toward. Like, for example, Ted Lasso. If somebody had told me that a series about a football coach going to be a soccer coach in England would be one of my favorite things I watched in the last several years, I'd be like, no. But because people that I knew and I knew we had similar tastes were talking about it and were so excited and so in love with it, I watched it and it ended up being just absolutely delightful. And we all get to be excited for season 2 together. So it's fun when you find people who like similar things, because then you can share like, oh, you're gonna like this, and it's fun.
We do have a
I was just gonna say, I can't think of anything out there that I'm like, oh, I wish I were a fan of that. I just don't have I have enough stuff that I'm a fan of. I don't think I have the time for more stuff.
For me, one of the things that I wish I could do that I've never allowed myself to do, like Kiersten, is gaming. Like, I know I would be a hardcore gamer, which is why I've never played a game. Because I understand myself. I know how obsessive I am, and I know that I would just be ridiculous about it. So I've kept away from it, because like the same thing happened with anime. I started watching anime when I was 28, and like within less than a year, I'd like watched like almost every single series, like except for all the mecha stuff. I don't like that, but like literally like everything else, like we can have a conversation about like every single series, because I love stuff from like Attack on Titan to what is it, Death Note, and like to that time I was just like, it's just my obsessiveness when it comes to these things. I understand myself, so I stay away.
The video game thing, you're very wise, because when I got my first Xbox, my brother sent me his old Xbox when he was done with it. And I plugged it in around noon, I guess. I hooked it up and I put the game in. And the next thing I knew, it was 3 a.m. So, and that was day one. So yeah, it's better than crack. It's bad.
Yeah, I feel that with the video games, like for example, right when quarantine started, Animal Crossing came out, and that just kind of took over everything. And it was a nice getaway where you were really going on an island and playing a video game daily. And I think everyone like started to kind of go back into like their different activities and hobbies that they like, and video games was definitely one of them. And it's like something that you realize like, oh, I enjoyed this, but I haven't really had the time for it yet. And now I'm actually having some time to go back and figure out what I like to do. Which it kind of relates to our next question, is how have your nerd interests evolved over the years? Would you say that you've become like a bigger nerd as you've grown older?
I'll go. I think that for me, now it's like the things that I was interested and fascinated with are the things that I write. It's funny because now that I'm a writer, I don't have as much time to like indulge in my nerdish things anymore. Like honestly, the one thing that I do with any regularity now is watch anime, because that serves as a palate cleanser if like I'm in between chapters and things of that nature. But I found that what I've done is like I've dug into like the things that I am fanatical about. Like for instance, I am fanatical about mermaids. Like literally I could tell you like name a different region in the world, and I could tell you a native mermaid or like, so now I'm writing books about them, because like that is I have it, like I've studied for years and spent all my time reading this stuff, and now it is time for me to regurgitate and create in my own way.
Definitely, it's become easier to be a nerd as I've gotten older. I mean, again, I'm I'm older than both of you, by quite a bit. And what has happened is, if you had told 12-year-old Barry, someday all this stuff that you love and that nobody else around you understands is going to be multi-billion-dollar business and everybody will know about it, I would not have believed you. And now it's the easiest thing. I mean, I can almost indulge my geekery without even trying. I turn on the TV and there's superhero TV shows. I walk down the street and there's cool video games, on billboards. It's you don't even have to try anymore. It's really kind of great. But it's also, it's easy to fall into the rabbit hole because it is around you all the time. I never would have imagined this world where all of this is available. I mean, you were talking about anime. I loved anime when I was younger, but like it was all these crappy bootleg VCR tapes, some of these VHSs, and it was terrible. And now like you can stream all of it. It's incredible. It's so great. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, and I think that along with that access to more is and especially as you get older too, like I find the way that I engage with things is different. Like I expect more and I ask more from the fandoms and the properties that I'm engaging with. Just because like, part of the reason why I loved Buffy so much when I saw it as a teenager is it was one of the first series that I saw that not only portrayed a teenage girl as the most powerful person on the planet, but took her seriously, right? And now, this many years later, we can acknowledge that there were a lot of flaws in Buffy and in some of the storylines and in some of the people that worked on the show, that there were a lot of issues. But that was it. That was all I had. And it meant so much to me. And it's so nice that we have so much more to engage with now that we can say, like, you know what? That entire show that ran for 15 seasons never once had a sustained storyline where a woman had agency and actually made decisions for herself or even survived. So I'm just not going to watch it because I don't have to, because there are so many other options. And there are a lot of people that love that one, and that's awesome. More power to them. But I don't have to engage with that one because I can find things that better reflect the values that I have and the things that I'm interested in and, the world that we live in. And that's what I think is so cool about, living in this time that we do where there's such an abundance of materials that we can engage with, is that we can, we can engage thoughtfully and we can really pick and choose where we're spending our time and where we're spending our money and put it toward those things that, not only like hit us on all the sweet storytelling spots that we love so much, but that also represent and show stories that we want to engage with.
And can I really quickly interject, because Barry touched on something, the fact that all of this is like so acceptable now, because when I was first, engaging in the things that I loved, it was like, oh, Namina, you're weird, you're so strange. Why are you like this little, and the thought of like a little Black girl watching anime, people would be like, what the what? And now it's the thing, like the fact that I'm an anime nerd, nobody bats an eye because they're all anime nerds,
Can I say, I mean, I love that because I think, obviously, I mean, it's not the topic of the panel, but like the whiteness of fan culture has been an issue for a very, very long time. And so that's really important. And I think just the notion of diversifying the fandom is so important. And it makes me think this is just a personal thing. My mom, who's in her 70s and never understood comic books or superheroes when I was growing up, suddenly, because of the pandemic, has been watching the Marvel TV shows with my brother. And she watched Falcon and Winter Soldier. And she was so excited by it. And at the end, spoiler alert, she's like, Captain America's black now. Isn't that amazing? And I'm like, here's my 70-something, white mom going, that's so incredible. That's so cool. And I said, well, they're going to make a movie about him. She goes, a movie about a black Captain America? That's great. And I'm just like, yeah, this is cool. This is, we're expanding the boundaries that should have been expanded a long time ago. But I guess better late than never. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really it's become everyone is very accepting and open-minded and ready to embrace the change. And it's something that I've seen throughout like books and social media that's surrounding books, especially like Instagram and TikTok, focusing on like having a diverse shelf and being open-minded of what you read. And it's really changing and for the better. And it's something to look forward to, especially towards writing like in the future. We do have another question of, did you fall into the mainstream like nerd interests as a teen, or were you on the fringes of like you don't want to like a certain nerd culture because it's too mainstream?
I'm gonna take a shot at this. I don't know about mainstream, but I will say something like, so it's funny for me, my sort of nerd culture has been me by myself, because for a long time, I have found sort of fandoms unwelcoming, you know, like it's like I can consume anime on my own, like, you know, because like that's what I love. But I feel like sometimes when I step into spaces, there's that whole let's test you on here, 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 here to know your stuff. And I'm just like, well, you know, that's not what I came for. Like I just came because I like the violence, like, you know, like it is sue me, you know? So I think that for me, I like the things that I like, you know, and I'm very fanatical about the things like that I like. For instance, when I was younger, I was fanatical about fairies, you know, and I was fanatical about those worlds. And then I discovered Holly Black and her books, and I was just like, oh, there it is. She made the world that I've always thought was perfect for fairies, and I can rest now. You know, that's beautiful. And so like I engage with these worlds sort of on my own, because the sad thing is I know on some level that sometimes as a woman, as a Black woman, when you enter certain spaces, there's this needing to make sure that this is my space. So for me, I like the things that I like. And if I find something fascinating, by the way, Redwall, we'll talk after this, Redwall, I read every single book. They better not mess up on the food. Because like you know how we feel about the food. Yes, got that off my chest. Redwall. I forgot everything else. The food. That's it.
Yeah, and Namina, I think you're exactly right. In that, you know, hopefully it's getting better, but historically and even today, there are a lot of fandoms and fandom groups that are not welcoming, and the gatekeepers really don't want to let new people in, and they don't want to let new stories be told there, where they can't see themselves as the default hero, right? Like if we're taking the default, this is what a hero looks like, away from them, it's very threatening to them. And you know, I found like there are certain shows or movies or properties that I will not mention online at all, because I don't want to engage with that type of fandom. As far as when I was growing up, it was harder to find your people, right? Like, because when I was a teenager, the internet was a thing, but it wasn't like, you know, widely used or accessible. And so it was always really thrilling when you would find somebody that liked the same thing that you liked. Like, I still remember being on a bus home from a Spanish field trip and being like, oh, I hope we get home in time. And a girl was like, for what? And I was like, there's this show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And she's like, I like it too. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think we're friends now. And it's always fun finding your people. And it's nice now that we have these ways to find more people. And like, you know, on this panel, Nam and I now know that we probably both had fledgling crushes on mice. Pretty sure Martin the Warrior was my first fictional crush.
Also badgers.
Badgers are hot, yeah, for sure. But it's so fun, right? Like, and it's fun that, you know, you can find these people, you can find podcasts about the things that you love. You know, you can find those ways where you can find a fandom that's welcoming. And if you like something and the fandom isn't welcoming, that's on them. That's not on you. And like, yeah, it's unfortunate that for a long time there have been those gatekeepers that have said, this is mine, and if you don't fit, then you can't like it. That's baloney. Like what you like. Like, Doesn't matter. Nobody gets to tell you how to be a fan of something and how to engage with and how to enjoy it.
Yeah, the toxicity of fandom is one of the more disappointing things that I've seen evolve over the course of my life of being a fan. Because, you know, for me, being a fan of some of these things as a kid was one of the things that singled me out to be bullied. You know, oh, you read comic books, geek, nerd, pal, pal. And it's really disheartening to see the bullied kids turn around and become bullies. And that's what you are when you know, if somebody comes into the room and says, oh, I like this thing too, and you start quizzing them on it, you know, to try to prove that they don't belong because they don't fit this perception of what you think a fan should be, you've just become the bully. And that's, you know, that's disheartening for so many reasons. So yeah, that's the downside of the fandom spreading, is that those people begin to congregate. You know, when I was a kid, there was no internet, and I mean, literally, like we would write our stories and our articles and make copies and send them through the mail to people, and then, you know, get stuff back, and then you'd write back to them, and it was like a message board, but it took 3 weeks to get a message. But I mean, it was fun because there was a safety to it, because like the internet, there was an anonymity, but since it wasn't immediate, it felt safer, because if somebody didn't like something you wrote, they couldn't be in your face about it. And that was a good thing. I can't even remember what the question was at this point, but anyway, toxic fandom, bad. Not toxic fandom, good. There you go.
I do have one last question. And it's, what would you tell yourself, like, as a kid, like now, what would you tell yourself as a kid about your fandoms? Would you tell yourself, would you be supportive? Would you say, oh, I don't know if you should have gotten into that fandom, you're in over your head about that? Like, what would you say to yourself?
I'd say, Kiersten, someday Buffy the Vampire Slayer will remodel your bathroom. I mean, and like, I love that. I love that this thing that I was passionate about, that influenced me as a storyteller, became part of my storytelling life, right? Like, and that's why I always encourage my kids, if they're interested in something, go all in. Like, if you're interested in it, maybe you're not gonna be interested in 5 more years, whatever. You love it now, you're interested in it now, awesome. Like, and that's the thing, is like, I think that these things that we love and these stories that we love and these worlds that we love, they imprint on us both as a person and as a storyteller. And I love that. I love Namina talking about all of these like fascinations that she had as a child and how that's translated into influencing her as an adult, as a writer. I love that Barry was obsessed with like DC and Marvel, and he's gone on to write for those properties. And like, I think there's so much value in loving things and in enjoying things, and maybe they won't become part of your profession, and maybe they will, but you're never going to regret enjoying something and loving it. Like, your relationship with it might change over time, but you know, if it makes you happy watching something or reading something, like, that's awesome. What more can you ask?
I would tell myself, Namina, you're not strange for liking these things and for being obsessive. I would also tell myself, Namina, you have a place in these fandoms, because, you know, I had a funny realization as I was sitting on this panel. Honestly, when I came here, I was just like, why did y'all put me on a fandom panel? Like, I don't understand. What do I know about fandoms? And I realized what that was is a hesitation to say, you know, I am a massive fan of things. Like, I just feel hesitant to like engage in certain things and be in certain worlds. And that's a realization that I just had now. It's, oh yeah, no, you're a super geek. I mean, I knew that, but like, I didn't realize I was part of fandoms.
Also, you're creating fandoms. I'm a fan of the Gilded Ones world, and I can't wait to go back into it. So like, you're not only a fan, you're creating fandoms. So
yay, thank you. I guess I would say to myself is, you are part of fandoms. And these are lovely places for you. You are part of it. That's the most important thing.
I guess I would tell my younger self 2 things. First of all, dude, don't worry. It's all going to work out better than you could possibly imagine. And second of all, the prequels are going to suck. You got to warn myself, you know. I mean,
savage.
So yeah.
Okay, so we can open up like questions if any of the viewers or any of the other team volunteers have any questions. You can put it in the chat. Let's see. Don't know if there.
While we're waiting on those, I would love to hear what everybody's working on next, what we can expect from everyone next, or what your most recent book that you're excited about is.
I want to hear what Namina's working on.
I'm working on book 2. I'm working on the movie. I have an animated TV show that we're out with. Yeah, and I'm about to work on Mermaid Worlds. That's what I'm working on. We're about to here. Like, hopefully I'll have y'all like listing class. You know what is my fandom dream is I create the mermaid fandom and have people listing classifications of this is this type of mermaid, it's actually this type of fish, these are their capabilities. Like, that's what I'm waiting for.
You want somebody to create a whole wiki of your world.
Yeah, and I would have been that kid, like 100%. Yep. My kids are those kids right now, so I love it.
Oh yeah, my daughter. There's these. You were talking about fairies before, Namina, and there's this series of books, the Rainbow Magic books, that are for like 3rd graders. My daughter's in kindergarten. She's very precocious, so she's reading them, and she is obsessed. She is constantly telling me, well, you know, Cleo, the blah blah fairy, can do blah blah da, 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 and run down all the lists. And I'm like, oh, this is when I was a kid telling my mom every member of the Legion of Superheroes and what they could do. Yeah, that's exactly what this is. Yeah, definitely. She also loves mermaids. She plays this mermaid game in Roblox where she swims around and does all kinds of cool stuff. So, yeah.
You have raised them well.
She will be there. She's too young right now, but she will get to your books. Trust me.
We do have a couple questions. We have, what is your favorite superpower? And just to let you know, I think we have about 5 to 6 minutes left.
I like the superpowers that really mess up people's lives, like Rogue and X-Men.
You're a sadist.
Wayward youth, stealing powers, then she's like, oh no. So not only is she like super powered, but like she has to deal with the guilt of having robbed other people of their powers. Love it. Anything that just makes you really messed up for the rest of your life and you have to reconcile that. Those are the superpowers I like.
I mean, okay, like, let's be honest. Flight is the best superpower. I mean, everybody wants to be able to fly. But my favorite power, like if I could only have one, would be super speed. Just because it's so universally applicable and you can just do so many different things with it. But, I mean, who wouldn't want to fly?
Not I. I am scared of heights.
But you wouldn't be if you could fly.
No, give me like another power. What are you doing here?
I want a superhero with somebody who gets flight and they're terrified of heights. So they just sort of hover toward the...
Who did this? Can I send this back? This is an outrage.
Here's the thing. You're afraid of flights because you could fall. You're afraid of heights because you could fall. If you can fly, you can't fall.
I mean, it's not even that. It's like, no, thank you. Vengeance. Matter of fact, like if you gave me that superpower, I would be pissed. I would be like, who did this? I demand to speak to a manager.
That's my next book now. That's my next book.
Yeah.
I would have like, honestly, like I like Doctor Strange's portmanteau of powers. Like basically, I just want to be like an unaging being that travels to different worlds and can survive in each world and ghost whenever things get hot. Be like, oh, I have seen your culture. Y'all about to do some stuff. Deuces, peace be on. And then I put her away through a portal, not flying, I might add.
And we have another question is, what is your favorite Marvel movie?
Thor Ragnarok. You could just have a crush on literally everything that moves in that movie. It's amazing. It's funny. It's delightful. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with anything Thor. Like honestly, I just watch these movies so he can take his shirt off. Like that's all I came to see. Like I don't care about anything else, and just to see what Asgard looks like. That's it. Thor, like you could do a whole movie, Thor, shirtless, Asgard, done.
He's just walking around Asgard with his shirt off.
Yes.
Yeah, like for 90 minutes.
There
Saying,
you go.
hey, how you doing? How you doing? I'm gonna say the Winter Soldier. Just because I felt like that was sort of where the Marvel Universe kind of leveled up, where they went from, look, it's superheroes on the screen to, oh no, now we're going to actually tell you a story. We're going to tell you a really good story. And I remember sitting in the theater and being kind of blown away. And my wife is not into superheroes all that much, but I made her go see it with me a second time. And she was like, okay, whatever. And 10 minutes in, she was like, just completely captivated. So yeah.
Based on the strength of that recommendation, I will now watch the movie.
And then I can ask one more question. What would be your superhero name if you could come up with one?
I suck
Well-
at it. Somebody name me, please.
Yeah, mine would probably be speed writer because that's my only superpower is writing really fast. So I would be the B team. I'd be like the Z team. I'd be like the one they call when they have, a PR emergency and they need to put out a statement. That would be my role on the superhero team up. We need a social media manager. Let's call speed writer. Yeah, it's not good.
I don't know the ghoster, because like basically what I do is I'd be like the wise person that comes in and sets them off on the adventure, knowing they're going to die. And then where they're like, oh my God, we need help, bruh. Like you decided to go on this adventure by yourself. Peace be on to you, my child. And then I go.
Mhm.
Okay, so it is 2:45. And I believe that is the ending time for our Zoom call. If anyone has any other questions, you can leave it in the chat. But I believe that is the wrap up of our panel, That's So Nerdy, How Geek and Nerd Culture Shaped My Writing. So thank you guys so much for attending and
Thank
for
you.
answering the questions.
Guys.
And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the Teen Book Festival. And again, thank you so much with the technical Zoom call.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.